We have played a key role behind the scenes in shaping this. It's right that we do so because it's in all of our interest, including our own national interest, that we move to a lasting peace in the region.
Well, when you say behind the scenes, like what? I mean, it seems to everybody else in the world that this has been done by Trump and the Israelis and Hamas. What part did we play?
These are complex matters of diplomacy that we are involved in, but we do welcome and recognise the critical role that the American government played in moving us to this point. What matters now, of course, is how we move beyond this immediate end to the war, moving towards that lasting peace that we all want to see. And that is why we've recognised a Palestinian state, but why alongside that, we're committed to making sure that a safe and secure Israel endures.
The reason I ask this is because, as you say, we recognise a Palestinian state. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, said that actually made it more difficult to land the deal. What's really going on here? I mean, was that some sort of clever strategic double bluff? I mean, the Americans say we made it more difficult. You're saying that we played this key part. What's true?
Well, we believed as a government that it was the right thing to do to recognise the Palestinian state because of the way in which the conflict had developed over the last 2 years, that if that hadn't happened, we would be in a position where there would no longer be that viable option of a Palestinian state.
But the Israelis were furious with us. The Americans said that we actually hampered the deal. What was the positive role that we played?
It was the right thing to do, and we will always act as a government in that manner. I do obviously understand that not everyone agrees with that decision, but given the scale of the conflict and what needed to happen, we felt it was the right thing to do to recognise that Palestinian state. But I should also just emphasise that the reason this conflict, of course, this phase of the conflict has began, was following the appalling events, the appalling atrocities of the 7th of October. And as we, over the course of the next 24 hours, what we all want to see are as many hostages as possible released home to their families and those brought home.
Trevor Phillips' interview with Bridget Phillipson exposed just how irrelevant Britain has become. When asked what role the UK played in shaping the Gaza ceasefire, she had no real answer, just empty phrases and political fluff. The truth is, Britain wasn't part of the talks at all. The US, Egypt, and Qatar made the deal while London watched from the sidelines. It was a national embarrassment, proof that Britain's voice on the world stage has faded.
Yes, I can, absolutely. Well, obviously, tomorrow we are hoping, fingers crossed, that the pitifully few, but they are still with us, the hostages are released, that the ceasefire will be honoured, that Hamas is will lay down its arms, and finally we can see the beginnings of a peace plan. Not a single hostage was released during the time that Biden was in office, and the wheel only started to come out of the mud when Trump started to make, lots of kind of bravado and blustering declarations. But the fact is that things have moved, and if you square that with what Keir Starmer did, he made lots of kind of vacuous, politically irrelevant, virtue signaling type comments about the war must end, we must do this, we must do that. Well, who cares unless you can do something that can substantiate that position, even by showing support. And what he actually did, ironically, was made, certainly for Jewish people in the UK, their position even worse. We were living in a time, regrettably, of spiralling anti-Semitism. Yet when Keir Starmer joined a procession of, as I said, virtue signalling leaders who offered no strings recognition of the Palestinian state, without it being contingent upon the release of the hostages and Hamas disarming, so obviously an absolute kick in the teeth to Israel and to the innocent people of Gaza, it was seen as a kind of almost a reward for terrorism, because there was nothing to incentivize Hamas, who are a genocidal terrorist organization, to comply. And if you square that with Trump, who, for all the sound and fury, and you're absolutely right, Dawn, he's very divisive. Not everybody believes in his policies, but on this particular matter, he has been absolutely steadfast in supporting what I believe is absolutely right. He didn't feel he needed to kind of make a few bleating greetings card style comments about the Middle East. He's saying, I'm actually going to apply pressure and make things happen.
I mean, Angela, we do know that the Prime Minister is going out to Egypt tomorrow to mark the peace agreement being signed along with President Macron. Obviously, Trump will be there as well. Do you think he simply should not be there, considering the Palestine recognition and some of the marches we are still seeing going on in London?
I absolutely agree with that, Dawn, because first of all, when I mentioned a reward for terrorism, what happened shortly after this no strings recognition was declared? Did it embolden the activists and anti-Semite who then carried out an atrocity at the synagogue where I got married?
Yeah.
Very short distance from my home in Manchester, been connected with my family for decades. But for any person with a moral compass, it would have been absolutely extraordinary and devastating to learn that innocent people, their blood was being spilt here in the UK because of somebody's position, so-called on a war thousands of miles away. It could have only been anti-Semitism. Was that jihadist emboldened by this idea that world leaders were all queuing up to say, yes, you can have it any which way without Hamas having to disarm? So because of that, what is Starmer's position? What has he done to shift the dial in the past 2 years? On the one hand, he's met some of the hostage families, yet the testimony he will have heard, which is harrowing. I have been in the same room. I've had the privilege of listening to a released hostage, Eli Sharabi, who was married to a British-born woman who was slaughtered by Hamas, and he was incarcerated for over 400 days. The brutality, the savagery of what he experienced on the streets, never mind amongst Hamas. And yet you have Starmer making placatory gestures. I mean, it makes me sick. And I have to say, it actually made my skin crawl when I saw him come to the synagogue just near where I live and, press the flesh and make all the right noises. Too late. Also the beefed up powers that Shabana Mahmood has given to the police about trying to curtail the excessive nature of the hate marches. Why has that been a reactive policy? Why didn't that happen over the past 2 years? Why is it only when something as terrible as 2 innocent people being killed in the UK they do something?
Angela Epstein's remark, "It made my skin crawl," perfectly captures the growing disillusionment with Keir Starmer's style of leadership. His statements on Gaza may sound refined and carefully worded, but beneath the surface lies a hollowness that even his supporters can sense. He speaks of compassion, law, and diplomacy, yet his words often feel rehearsed, a performance designed for optics rather than action. Epstein accuses him of virtue signaling, projecting moral authority without the courage to take a stand. It's a criticism that reflects a deeper truth. Starmer's caution, once seen as discipline, now reads as indecision, while world leaders like Trump and others are seen, rightly or wrongly, as shaping outcomes. Starmer lingers on the sidelines, offering commentary instead of leadership. In moments of crisis, the public looks for conviction, not carefully balanced statements. His tendency to avoid risk and controversy might protect him politically, but it drains him of authenticity. That's why Epstein's words sting so deeply, because they echo a broader sentiment. Keir Starmer may speak like a statesman, but too often he governs like an observer watching history unfold from a safe distance.